Hi, friend. Welcome to the Gospel Roadshow. Eric Mashaki here, your host. Glad you tuned in today. Today's video is entitled The End of Time as We Know It. We live in postmodern times, and in postmodern times such as these, agnostics are considered to be open-minded, real positive there, and atheists are considered to be scientifically minded, real positive things there. And if you're a Buddhist, you're considered to be philosophical. But if you're a Christian, you may be considered to be a fool. Well, I'm not going to argue with anybody who holds that opinion, but today I want to offer why maybe it may not be such a foolish thing to believe in this book and the gospel that we find in it. So the first verse I'm going to read to you today comes from John chapter 14, verse 29. Where Jesus says, "And now I have told you before it comes to pass, that when it does come to pass, you may believe." So like telling the future. That is, it might be called predictive prophecy. Predictive prophecy stands as one of the most viable proofs of the Bible's divine inspiration. One you can find on the internet, nice articles about, is where the prophet Ezekiel talks about the city of Tyre and how it became wealthy and became involved in slave trade. And God said, hey, look, I'm going to destroy the city. And then it gets destroyed just as Ezekiel had found in Daniel 2. And if you look, the heading is Nebuchadnezzar's Dream. Speaking of Nebuchadnezzar, he was mentioned in Bible prophecy before he showed up. The prophet said, look, Israel, you're really messing up. God's going to send Nebuchadnezzar to take you into captivity as a punishment for not following God's ways. In addition to Nebuchadnezzar, the Bible mentions Cyrus years before he comes on the scene. So in Daniel 2, we read about the king having a dream. And he has this dream, and he's so troubled by it, he wakes up and he gets all his wise men. These were magicians, astrologers, soothsayers, Chaldeans, it says. And he says, look, I've had this troubling dream. You tell me the dream and its interpretation, and I'll be happy and I'll reward you and you'll have gifts and honor. But if you can't, I'm going to chop you up and make your house a rubbish pile. And the Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such a thing of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. It is a difficult thing that the king requests. There is no one who can tell the king except the gods, whose dwelling place is not with flesh. So these wise guys were wise enough to say, we can't read your mind, know what you dreamed, or come up with the interpretation. So the decree went out to cut the wise men into pieces, and their houses made an ash heap. The thing was going to destroy them. And so that caused some worry on part of those wise men. Well, part of those wise men were 4 Hebrews, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Belteshazzar. Those are the Babylonian names. We know Belteshazzar's name as Daniel, who pretty much wrote all of the book of Daniel. One chapter in Daniel was written by King Nebuchadnezzar. You'll want to check that out. Daniel went to the king and said, give me a little bit of time. I can't tell you the interpretation of your dream, but the God I serve can make it known if he chooses. Him and his friends probably prayed about it. They went to sleep, and the next day Daniel woke up. The first thing he did is he blessed the God of heaven because he got the dream. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his, and he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. And he thanks God a little more. So Daniel went to Arioch, who the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, "Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me before the king, and I will tell the king the interpretation." Then Antioch quickly brought Daniel before the king and said to him, "I have found a man of the captives of Judah who will make known to the king the interpretation." The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, "Are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen in its interpretation?" Sounds like he was just a little bit skeptical. Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, "The secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king, but there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets. And he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. As for you, king, thoughts came to your mind while on your bed about what would come to pass after this, and he would reveal secrets, has made known to you what will be. As far as me, the secret has not been revealed to me, because I have more wisdom than anyone living, but for our sakes who make known the interpretation to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your heart. You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. Looks a lot like this one here. Whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was thus awesome. This image head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, and its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partially of clay, mixed with iron. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them to pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together, becoming like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away, so that no trace of them was found, and the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So Daniel goes on to explain that Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold, and his kingdom lasted from 605 BC to 539 BC, documented in history and archaeology. Next came the Silver Kingdom, which is Persia, and it lasted from 539 to 331 BC. After that, brass was the Greek Empire, which lasted from 331 BC to 168 BC. These legs of iron were the monarchy of Rome, which lasted a long time, 168 AD to 476 AD. And then these feet of stone and clay represented many divided kingdoms. Daniel goes on to say how these kingdoms are going to come, pass, and that rock cut out without hands that smashes, sets up his own kingdom, is God's kingdom, which really represents the second coming of Jesus. When the sin problem is done away with, the world is made a better place, the way God originally wanted it to be. Time for a little book report. Here's a book I got. It's called A Thousand Shall Fall. And this is the electrifying story of a soldier and his family who dared to practice their faith in Hitler's Germany. So this guy here was named Franz. And, he had a day job, and then the war came, and a lot of the civilians were conscripted into the army. They didn't have much choice. And so Franz, he believed in thou shalt not kill. He wanted to be a conscientious objector. They didn't have that back then. They issued him a gun. He was afraid he didn't want to use it. Regulations said he had to carry a gun, so he carved a replica gun out of wood, painted it black, stuck it in his holster, and took the real gun and chucked it into a lake. He's like, I don't got a gun. I can't kill anybody. Everybody will see my gun. They'll think I'm being a good officer. Well, he had trials. One trial came when he, speaking his mind, and he said Hitler will never be able to unite the world under German rule because it's not in harmony with the Bible prophecy. The next event will be the rock that smashes the statue, and that will mark the end of our world. Then God will set up his own kingdom. And he got in trouble from officers who said, you know perfectly well that Hitler is establishing the Third Reich. That Reich will last for 1,000 years. Of course, we know it didn't last that long. And Hitler wasn't the first ruler to try and unite Europe. Napoleon Bonaparte, Mussolini, and if you read in Daniel 10, talks about how these kingdoms in the feet of clay and iron try and unite themselves by the mingling of men's seed. Basically, in Europe, there's lots of marriages to try and keep peace with all these little countries. So another interesting story in this book is how they're like headed into the Russian front, these Germans. And at one point in time, some of the officers get Franz, pull him aside. They've been hearing him say these things. Franz's superior had another officer who was a history teacher. He called in the history teacher and he called in Franz, and he had Franz give him the Bible study on Daniel 2. And he asked the history teacher, is this accurate? The history professor was like, yeah, those are the kingdoms, those are the times. And they thought about it. And after that, they decided to do something very important here. From now on, we will no longer operate a third of our motorized vehicles. The gasoline rations thus saved, I want you to store in drums and canisters so that when the end comes, we'll have enough fuel to go back home. So that really preserved their life back in World War II. Hitler sent them out. Oh, troops will be coming behind you. We're winning the war. No, they had trouble all over Europe. And the Russians came, and luckily for his company of men, they had the foresight to ration gasoline. No backups and supplies were coming, and they were able to make it home safely. That's what we all want to do, right? We want to make it home safely. And what is really home? This earth with all the pollution, selfishness, violence. I don't think that's really the home God intended for us. Let's look at some more of Jesus' words here in Matthew 24. Matthew 24, Jesus' disciples asked him, as they sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately saying, tell us when these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age. And Jesus answered and said to them, take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled. All these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in various places. All these things are just the beginning of sorrows. And I'm going to just skip ahead here. It says, then there will be a great tribulation, such has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, nor shall ever be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Basically, Jesus is saying, I have a time when I'm coming back, but I don't know if it's nuclear war, pollution. Basically saying people of the earth are going to destroy the earth, and they won't have anything to eat, or they'll destroy their habitat and die. So I got to come a little sooner than that day. I told my wife, I'm going to do a video, and it's going to be called The End of the World as We Know It. And she said, oh, it's the end of the world as we know it. And we both had a laugh. That song back from when I had more hair and it wasn't gray. I'm not going to sing REM, but I am going to sing a song that might kind of talk about this. Lift up the trumpet and loud let it ring. Jesus is coming again. Cheer up, ye pilgrims, be joyful and sing. Jesus is coming again. Echo with hilltops, proclaim it, ye plains. Jesus is coming again. Coming in glory, the Lamb that was slain. Jesus is coming again. Heavings of earth tell the fast wandering throng. Jesus is coming again. Tempest and whirlwinds, the anthem prolong. Jesus is coming again. Nations are angry, by this do we know. Jesus is coming again. Knowledge increases, men run to and fro. Jesus is coming again. Coming again, coming again. Jesus is coming again. So, of course, I believe that with my whole heart, and I believe it's relatively soon. That's why I started the Gospel Roadshow, is to share that truth with anybody who will listen. So I hope you make Jesus your friend, and he'll see you through that time of trouble.